On today's Locked On Jayhawks, the 10 best portal targets available for KU basketball.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks, and thanks for making it your first listen every day, as well as thank you to the everydayers catching each and every show, whether you find us anywhere you get your podcast audio or on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, we're bringing down the 10 best current available transfer targets for KU basketball. We'll get into that. We'll also get into some of the latest news, including some players picking other schools, some players narrowing down their list, including Kansas, Darrion Peterson with a little update as well. We'll get to all that, starting with our top 5 here in our first segment. First, though, the episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Okay, so top 10 available transfer portal targets at this point for KU basketball. Now, when I'm recording this, there's a chance that somebody ends up committing by the time that, this comes out or you see this or whatever. I should also mention this list is not the top 10 just best players in general. It's ones that maybe make some sense to KU. Now, at the same point in time, some of the ones on here, maybe they don't end up making sense to KU from like a financial perspective, right? Like maybe there's only so much you can do from an NIL perspective that you can't afford some of the names on this list. But for instance, I guess I'm trying to think like one of the top centers in the portal or something who would have to be a starter, or I don't know if it's a player who, is maybe somebody who doesn't make sense for Kansas to go after, even if they're one of the top players. I'm not going to put them on this list. This is a Kansas-specific list. So let's start with number 1 of current available transfer targets, and we're going to go with Darrion Williams. Tough competition for me. It was between a couple guys putting in this number 1 spot, but I settled on Williams. I shouldn't say settle because it was a fun decision, but he's a 3-4. I like him best playing the 4, 6'6", 225 pounds. He'll be a senior from Texas Tech. We saw the public news, or maybe you did, maybe you didn't, that, that basically they're bringing back JT Toppin, the Big 12 Player of the Year, for like $4 million. And essentially they had to like pick and choose, okay, what players do they want back, because you only have so much that you can afford. And so you end up losing Darrion Williams in this situation. And Williams hit some clutch shots in the NCAA tournament, ended up not having his best shooting performances in the NCAA tournament overall. But this guy who shot almost 46% from 3 last season, 34% this season when the volume had to go up. Really good free throw shooter, really good stretch player. I just really like his game, and I feel like there are a lot of times where he becomes a matchup problem for the other team, and it really causes you to have to defend in a different way. He's also 98th percentile for his position and assist to turnover rate. So you're getting good ball movement from a guy at the 4. He's got the power to play at the 4. Those 3.6 assists per game show his playmaking ability, which I like. When you have Darrion Peterson, you have a guy you could kind of, play off of. I really like Darrion Williams' game. I think he's a fine defender. I don't think I'd call him like an elite defender, but I don't think he's a negative on that end either. In fact, team about 2 points better when he was on the floor defensively, but about 13 points better when he was on the floor in the offensive end. So Darrion Williams is my number 1 available right now for KU. Is it somebody you can afford? I don't have the answer to that. Number 2 on this list, kind of same question here, RJ Lewis. And I thought about which wing do you go with, because Williams is a wing who can play the 3 and the 4, but I like him better at the 4. RJ Lewis is a wing you can play at the 3 or the 4. I like him a little bit better at the 4, but I think if you were saying you're going to play one at the 3, I would probably prefer Lewis a little bit more at the 3. I think a little bit more athleticism, a little more length to Lewis, a little less power though, but 18.2 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, actually better rebound numbers, worst assist numbers, but the 2 field goal percentage, Williams at 43.9, Lewis at 43.9. Williams slightly better 3-point shooter this year, but it's basically picking nits. But you go back the year prior, and then you see Williams had the better 3-point shooting year that year. Also better free throw shooting for Darrion Williams, though Lewis gets to the line a little bit more. And again, both players similar. Like Lewis, the offense about 11 points better when he's on the floor. The defense about 2 points better when he's on the floor. So they're very similar players. Lewis, obviously the Big East Player of the Year. Williams, I do think that sometimes he got. I'm sure in some ways, like, it makes your life easier to play with JT Toppin. Probably a lot of ways it made his life easier, but also I do think he got overshadowed sometimes with how good of a player he was because JT Toppin was on Texas Tech, and so I like both players. You couldn't go wrong with either one. But the question is, do you go kind of all in with your NIL money on one of these players, or do you kind of spread it out to different ones? But I think those are the top 2 players available. I would almost have a tier break after those two to the next tier. And my number 3 on here is Rodney Rice. We did a Rodney Rice deep dive. Now, since then, Rodney Rice has set up some visits to a couple schools. I know Villanova is one of them, and that's one that we mentioned that, his head coach is now at Villanova, so it makes sense. I forget the other one. I forget if it's Tennessee or what, but his former backcourt teammate, Jacoby Gillespie, I'd imagine they're close or friends and stuff, right, is at Tennessee. So maybe Kansas can find a late visit. Maybe it's out of the price range. I don't entirely know. But again, this is just kind of in theory because I do like his ability that he's used to playing off ball of other primary targets. The team 19 points better when he's on the floor on the offensive end of the court. He's a really good 3-point shooter and floor spacer. That's why I have him number 3. But if you're never there, you already caught that deep dive on Rodney Rice. If not, go check it out. Number 4 on the list is Wesley Yates. He is a transfer from USC. Bonus points here for Yates. Now, I don't know how much Bill Self cares about this because I think when you have Darren Peterson, the idea is you have 1 year here. If we get a transfer as a senior versus somebody who's a sophomore, like, who cares, right? In an ideal world, maybe you'd bring on a couple transfers who have at least multiple years that you can still have that behind you. But who knows? Maybe Bill Self is going all in on Darren Peterson. For all we know, Bill Self is like, hey, this is my last rodeo, and I just want to build it all in this year. No idea if that's true or not, but it would make sense. But it is a bonus with Yates that he's coming off his freshman season at USC. So he still would have up to 3 years left. Then again, in today's era with the NIL and portal era and stuff, like, you can bring in a sophomore, you can bring in a senior, you can bring in a junior, and it probably has similar likelihoods of that player being at your school for 1 year anyway. But Yates, kind of similar to Rice, really good shooter, 14 points per game. Doesn't have a ton of other big numbers in terms of the rebound or the assists. Better steal numbers from Yates than Rodney Rice. Actually better 3-point percentage for Yates than Rice, 44%, but it's on lower volume. And also, I think with Yates, playing on a worse team at USC than what Rice did. Also, we know Rice can play kind of off other, really good players with Yates. Again, USC wasn't a tournament team. But I do like that Yates also, even though he, bad defensive rebound rate numbers, 72nd percentile for guards at offensive rebound rate. So he did show that he has that ability there. But yeah, 97th percentile in 3-point percentage for Yates. And he was at USC, where you have the power, conference stuff coming in. So he would be number 4, kind of in that same tier of Rodney Rice. Is like, if you're just looking for shooting and somebody who can, play next to Darren Peterson, I think it would make a lot of sense. And the number 5 on the list is a entry in today, and that would be Cedric Coward. Full disclosure, I haven't done like a full deep dive on Coward. I've looked into the numbers and stuff, haven't got a chance to, work around on some of the more in-depth stuff that I usually do. But this is kind of going out on a whim on it because the numbers here are ridiculous. So Coward actually started his career at a Division III school. I think Willamette is how you pronounce it. Then went to Eastern Washington, and then went from Eastern Washington for a couple of years to this past season going to Washington State. And he only played in 6 games, started all 6. He got injured. I think it was a shoulder injury that did him out for the rest of the season. And so I don't know if the D3 season doesn't count and this past year will end up being a medical redshirt. Theoretically, he could be like a junior at his next stop. So I think he could still even have 2 years left. But 17.7 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists per game, 1.7 blocks as a 6'6" wing. The field goal percentage, 56%, 40% from 3 on 5 attempts per game, 84% at the foul line. The true shooting percentage, 70%. Like, these are bonker numbers. We talked about Josh Dix, who's like this great shooter, right? Josh Dix' true shooting percentage is 61%. Coward is 70%. Now, again, it's very limited games, but his plus minus on off for offensive end, 13 points better when he's on the floor. for Washington State. Again, just 6 games. They were 9 points better defensively when he was on the floor. What about the year before at Eastern Washington, where he did have a full slate, though, and wasn't injured? They were 7 points better on offense, 6 points better on defense when he was on the floor. So this dude is a beast. I think he's also entering the NBA draft, early entry, like testing stuff. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But he's somebody who can play the 2, he can play the 3, he can play the 4 even because of his rebounding and blocking ability. That one would be a home run. And honestly, the more I talk about it, like maybe he should be even higher on that list than number 5. But I definitely think he deserves to be in the top 5 and would be a home run if you can go after him. Okay, who are the next 5 on the list of top portal targets available for KU basketball? We get to that next. Today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team, diving into player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Plus, the Masters are going on this week. And you can get all sorts of fun action on somebody to win, somebody finish top 5, somebody finish top 10. You can do round by round matchups against, 3 balls with who's going to have the best score for that specific day, over-unders for who's going to have the best score. You can look ahead and start betting on the U.S. Open or the Open or PGA Championship, whatever you'd like. You can do all that with FanDuel if you're in a golf mood as well. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets with FanDuel. Thanks for joining us on Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen. Don't forget to check out Locked On College Basketball or Locked On College Football for your second listen every day. All right, top 10 targets available for Kansas in the portal right now. And again, by the time you listen to this, there could be new entries or new deletions from the portal based on how fast this stuff moves. So real quick, our top 5, number 1, Darrion Williams, 2, RJ Lewis, 3, Rodney Rice, 4, Wesley Yates, 5, Cedric Howard, but arrows going up on Coward and maybe should be higher than that. Number 6 on the list, another new entry is Jameer Watkins. And this is another 3-4. Even has played some point guard at times in his career as like the primary initiator for, small bits and minutes. But I mostly view him as a 3-4. He's 6'7", though, good length. It'll be his 6th year in college. So you'd have an experienced player. I see some people, do that sometimes where they're like, oh, we don't want that guy. He's 24 years old. And I'm like, I can understand why him being 24 years old, you don't think that should be in college anymore, that you think it's being taken advantage of the rules, or that, you think he's not going to have a chance in the NBA because of that. But in what way is that a bad thing for college basketball? You know what I mean? Like, if you have the choice between somebody who's 24 years old and somebody who's 19 years old, if you're just talking about what makes the better college basketball team, obviously if it's, if the 19-year-old is a one and done 5-star lottery pick, that's different. But, you're trying to build the best college basketball team. So who cares about the age? But anyway, for Watkins, 18.4 points per game, 5.7 rebounds per game, 2.4 assists, 1.2 steals, 43% from the field, 32 from 3. So not super high efficiency numbers, but not like bad ones either. Over 5 3-point attempts per game, though. So you like to see the volume, because maybe if it scales back to 3 or 4 per game, the percentage goes up to 34, 35. Team about 4 points better with him on the floor on the offensive end. 61st percentile in defensive rebound rate. Also gets to the foul line a bunch. 86th percentile in free throw attempt rate. And he's just kind of good in a lot of areas. 70th percentile in the paint, 60th percentile mid-range, 60th percentile from both zones from 3. So he's just a proficient player, can play different positions. He gives you length. Definitely an interesting player, to say the least. I thought about flipping between him and the guy in at number 7, and even the guy we'll discuss at number 8 too. But let's get to the guy at number 7, which we'll have some news on him coming up in segment 3. Melvin Council Jr. He is the point guard transfer from St. Bonaventure. We just did a deep dive on him on yesterday's episode. Again, thank you to Everydayers who already caught it. If you haven't, go look back and watch that one, because Kansas is in the thick of things on Melvin Council Jr. And I'm not going to go as deep on him because of that, but basically the quick rundown is, not the best 3-point shooter, but he's a great athlete. He's a really good defender, and he's a lengthy point guard who also rebounds the basketball and can cause a lot of problems for opponents in transition. I guess the reason I had Watkins 6 and Council 7, Like, you're talking about two guys that, okay, well, neither one's a great 3-point shooter. Watkins, though, is a little bit better there. And then the idea that, okay, if you, like, in theory, would you prefer bringing on another wing or another ball handler? Maybe it makes more sense to bring on another ball handler to take some off of Darren Peterson at times throughout the game. Then again, if you think El Marco can cover that, maybe you just want the length and versatility that another wing would provide. I don't think you can go wrong in either direction, though. And to be clear, like, everybody I have on this top 10 list would be players that, like, I'd be happy with if Kansas wound up with a commitment for them as we go through. All right, number 8, it was, I don't know if this is the right way to pronounce it, LeJean Watts. And Watts is he's a very unique player. He can play the 3 or the 4. He can play even the point guard to a certain extent if you want to play kind of like Jalen Pickett, booty ball, point guard style. I think in KU's sense, he would mostly be used as a 4. He's 6'6", but he's 233 pounds, and he uses his strength to his advantage. He's going to be a junior, I believe, and he actually was teammates with Coward. Both were at Washington State this past season. Obviously, like I said, though, Coward ends up getting injured after 6 games. Watts was also prior to that at Eastern Washington, along with Coward. Now, is it concerning at all that Eastern Washington wasn't making a ton of noise in NCAA circles if they have these 2 studs? I don't know. But I like both as players. And Watts, about 14 points, 7 rebounds, over 4 assists per game. Really good passer, really efficient shooting percentages. 55 from the floor, 42 from 3. It's only on 2 a game, though, so it's not like a real, it's more so just, hey, if I'm wide open, like, I'll take the shots. But really good effective field goal percentage and true shooting percentages for him. I don't know how impactful he is on the defensive end of the floor necessarily, but he is somebody who can get a lot of assists. He is somebody who can get defensive rebounds for you, and he is somebody who can score on the inside and really post up. And if Kansas doesn't have a traditional center post-up option, does it make some sense to bring in a guy like LeJean Watts, who is a versatile player and can also give you some of those post-up opportunities at the 3 or the 4 position, right? I like him overall as a player, and I think he'd be very interesting in terms of his passing ability with working off players like Darren Peterson and Floyd Badunga and, the guys that you're going to be adding in the portal, whether it's like Trey White off a cut, who's good from the corner as well, or I don't know, Jaden Dawson, who's good off threes. I think he's a very interesting player. Number 9 on the list is KYAN Evans. He is the transfer guard from Colorado State, and Kansas, to some extent, has been in contact and has been, in some form or fashion, like in the thick of things. Now, I don't know that they're the favorite to land him, but he's a 6'2" combo guard who'll be a junior. Originally from the Kansas City area, and obviously Colorado State had a really good season. He just averaged 16.5 points per game in their 2 NCAA tournament games. He was 8 of 13 from 3 in those 2 tournament games, and that is the rub on him. He's a 45% three-point shooter on over 4 per game. Now, he also has a solid assist-to-turnover rate. He, you're not getting a lot of steals there. You're not getting a lot of blocks. You're not getting a lot of necessarily like, driving and rebounds and stuff like that. But if you're talking about an off guard next to Darren Peterson who could shoot threes, you couldn't go wrong with KYAN Evans. And I do think that Kansas is in need of more 3-point shooting. So I do like Evan. I mean, if you're saying they need more 3-point shooting and you have a guy who's shooting 45% from 3, okay, that makes some sense, right? And then number 10 on the list is Isaiah Watts. This is somebody I haven't seen really come up so far, and I don't know if he's been in the portal a while, so the fact that there hasn't been anything come up makes me think Kansas might not be that interested. Then again, we didn't really hear anything about Jaden Dawson, and he randomly, committed out of the blue. So who knows? But with Watts, this is a player I really like. He's a 6'3" combo guard, again from Washington State, but he will be a junior. 11 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, a little over 2 assists per game. More of a shooting guard, but, can handle a little bit. He is more of the defensive type of guard. So he is somebody who's 93rd percentile in Hakeem rate nationally. He gets 1.7 steals per game, 0.6 blocks per game. Really good for a guard there. Now, the problem is the 2-point percentage, not very good. But the 3-point percentage is okay, 34.8% on 5.7 per game. So good volume. It's above average in 3-point percentage. It's basically more of a ball handling version of Jaden Dawson in a way, like maybe a little worse at 3 than Dawson. I don't know. Maybe he's even a better version of him defensively, but That would at least be interesting to me because he's a combo guard that I don't think always needs the ball in his hands. And so I am at least a little bit intrigued by what Isaiah Watts could bring to the table. Now, a couple honorable mentions, Malik Thomas, who, I don't know, I feel a little silly not putting him in, maybe even over at number 10, Isaiah Watts or something, because he averaged like 20 points per game at San Francisco, 39% from three on over 5 attempts per game, gets to the foul line. Problem is, the defensive numbers are not very good on Malik Thomas, and we've been down this road before. If you're not doing those things with Bill Self, is he going to fully trust you? So, like, in a vacuum, I think Malik Thomas is probably the better player there, but, like, is it a great fit with KU? Dylan Mitchell, like, I don't know. In a world, I could see Bill Self liking him, but also I don't know how much of a fit it is. A.K. Okereke, Blake Harper, Elijah Freeman. Who knows? Tyon Grant Foster, he shot really bad from three this past season, but shot well, or at least okay, the year before. Nick Camis. Honestly, like, I thought about putting number 10 on this list as just token spot for backup center, because in theory, a player who fits the billing of like backup center probably isn't a top 10 overall player target available for KU, but it also is a top 10 most important thing for KU to land, if that kind of makes sense. So like Carter Welling or Sean Phillips or Arrington Page or whoever that backup center that they're targeting is, in a vacuum, they're not as good as like I mentioned, Malik Thomas or Ali Deba is an example from Southern Illinois, or Xavier Lee, I don't know, from Princeton or something. But I did want to at least make mention of them because the importance, like getting a backup center is top 2, top 3, top 2 importance for KU at this point in time in the offseason. But the individual player, because it is going to be a backup, is not going to be probably as good as the targets that are available at other positions, if that makes sense. If you do want a best name, maybe we go with Matas Vokiatitis. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce that at the center position. I don't know if he'd be interested in, because you have to be willing to, Floyd Badunga is going to get a lot of minutes. Now, the one thing here with him is he's not really a three-point shooter, so does it make more sense to bring on a center who can also play a little bit at the 4 so that you can play them together to, be able to promise a little bit more minutes? But he's an excellent rebounder, 95th percentile low rebound rate, 82nd percentile defensive rebound rate. I don't know. Otherwise, maybe you're looking further down the road. And if you're looking for somebody who can shoot threes a little bit too, Carter Welling maybe makes some sense from UC Irvine and Utah Valley before that, as somebody who can, stretch the floor a little bit and play with Floyd Badunga. Maybe Alvaro Forgueres. He's a transfer from Robert Morris, 41% from 3 on 3 attempts per game. He can play the 4 or the 5, 98th percentile defensive rebound rate. But the problem is he's probably fetching a higher price than you want to pay for backup center. So I don't entirely know there. All right, latest portal news, including Diggy Coit to Maryland, Darren Peterson, the new number 1, and a player cutting their list to 4, including Kansas. Thanks for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks, making it your first listen every day. All right, latest news. Let's start with Diggy Coit, who yesterday committed to Maryland. And so he's going to be going there with Buzz Williams. And I think that's actually a good fit for him, because if you look at what Buzz Williams has done here these past few years at Texas A&M, it's basically have like 2 guards who are, for lack of a better word, shuckers that can get hot from 3 in a given game, or at the very least can create shots for the offense, and then just have like three guys crash the offensive glass. And in the games that the guy's hot, great. In the games that they're not, you're going to get a bunch of offensive rebounds and make that your go-to skill. And so I think Diggy Coit makes sense for that. He's somebody who can, get off threes from long distance in a bunch of different ways. So I think that's a good fit for him at Maryland. And I did enjoy watching him play at Kansas this past season. So good luck to him over with the Terrapins. Darren Peterson finished the final 24/7 Sports rankings number 1 in the recruiting class. They jumped him over AJ DeBonta. Does it actually mean anything for him coming in? I don't know, but it's a cool standing thing, and it's a cool thing that I get to just be like, it's so fun to, it's still fun to say, the number 2 recruit in the country. It's a lot more fun to be like, the best recruit in the country, the number 1 recruit in the country, right? And then Melvin Council, who we had the deep dive on yesterday. Again, check it out if you haven't already. Thank you if you already did. He narrowed his school list down to 4 schools. Kansas is involved in them. It sounds like KU might be having a visit soon with Council too. Jaden Quaintance, who was a possible center option, but one that we talked about on a couple episodes ago in our 3rd segment that was going to be very complicated if KU wanted him, both from a money standpoint, an injury standpoint, and, how would you make it work standpoint. He ends up picking Kentucky, so that is no longer a worry, but we'll see if he ends up playing or not with that injury. Brendan Housen, the transfer from K-State, who's a really good three-point shooter. He apparently has interest from KU, according to Joe Tipton of Tipton Edits. We've talked about before, though. Can't totally trust every list you see on social media, but if you did with this one, I mentioned on a previous episode, there is a spot that Kansas, I think, still needs to fill, which is a bench player, whether it's your seventh man, eighth man, who can be a three-point shooter. If you want to call it the Jalen Coleman-Lands role, that's fine. Would Brendan Housen be interested in that after he was like a starter for Kansas State? I don't know, but if he would be, I would be cool with that. I don't know that I would view him as like, if you'd want to bring on Brendan Housen as a starter, I don't know if I'd be on board with that. But like, yeah, in the Jalen Coleman-Lands role, would love that. Honor Huff as well, who I thought would have been a good three-point shooter to play with K in backcourt. He's down to 5 schools, no Kansas, and he would have been in discussion for this top 10, honestly, at the back end of the top 10 had that news not come out. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page. More transfer portal talk, deep dives, all that and more coming at you. So make sure you're subscribed to the show anywhere you get your podcast and on our YouTube page. See you next time.